Welcome to the X-Site channel, where we explore mysterious enigmas and unexplained phenomena from all over the world. Have you ever wondered if we are truly the only beings in this vast universe? Stories about UFOs, aliens, and strange phenomena continue to make us ponder. Today, we will explore one of the most bizarre events in history, an unbelievable encounter between humans and an extraterrestrial being in the middle of the Nevada desert, near Groom Lake. A soldier named Jason Sands, on a routine military mission, accidentally encountered a creature that was not human. A strange and mysterious confrontation took place, raising big questions about what is being hidden, about what the government doesn't want us to know. What happened? And why, after everything, couldn't Jason explain what he had experienced? In 1980, Jason Sands was a young soldier who had just completed intense training and joined the U.S. Army. He was part of a special unit under the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, tasked with overseeing sensitive military areas and protecting strategic facilities. Long days spent in top-secret bases, where dark secrets were kept deep underground, had gradually hardened him into a tough man, always ready to face any situation. However, what Jason didn't know, and perhaps would never forget, was that today he and his team would face an inexplicable event that would change everything. As the first light of a hazy morning pierced through the thick clouds in the Nevada sky, Jason and his team began their journey. The road was long, desolate, and filled with dry earth mounds, with only sand dunes gently rolling over the hills. Inside the vehicle, besides Jason, there was Sergeant Miller, the calm driver, and the only one in the group with extensive experience operating heavy military vehicles. The rest of the team were rookies, but all had been trained in harsh conditions. The team of 4 each had distinct roles, but they all knew that in this line of work, coordination and thorough preparation were vital. The road to the target area was surrounded by an indescribable silence, as though nature had completely isolated this place from the outside world. Covered by distant hills, it felt like a different world, quiet and unchanged. However, none of them could have imagined that, on this day, the inexplicable would occur, as if an invisible force had arranged everything for them to confront an unexplainable truth. The military vehicle sped down the dusty dirt road, the engine roaring, and the dry landscape around them seemed to be swallowed by an endless space. A strange feeling of emptiness crept into Jason's mind, as though something unusual was waiting ahead. But no one spoke of it, no one voiced that concern. Everyone was silent, with only the engine's steady hum echoing in the stillness. Yet, while the others failed to notice anything strange, something unusual had appeared in Jason's mind. It felt like an intuition, a suffocating, inexplicable feeling rising within him. He tried to shake off that thought, but it clung to him, as though a dark shadow was lurking in the darkness, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The convoy continued down the desolate road in the Nevada desert, where the sun was still shy behind the thick clouds, leaving only a faint light, like a curtain covering everything around. Everything seemed normal. The hum of the vehicle's engine blended into the quiet space, and the desert's stillness seeped into everyone's minds. There were no signs of a strange change ahead, but the invisible feeling of something being off lingered in the air. Suddenly, a small black dot appeared to the left of the road, gradually becoming clearer as the vehicle approached. A figure stood alone in the vast desert space, like a ghost among the dry sand dunes. At first, Jason thought little of it. He assumed it might be a lost civilian or a soldier encountering some issues during their journey. After all, encountering strangers in such remote areas was not unusual. But as the vehicle drew closer, a strange feeling began to creep into Jason's thoughts. This was not just the cautious feeling of a soldier. It was something different, a feeling he couldn't explain. Something about this stranger, about their presence, didn't match what Jason had imagined. "Damn it," Jason whispered, his eyes fixed on the strange silhouette as the vehicle sped forward. As the distance closed, the bizarre details became clearer. This man, although wearing a military uniform, seemed out of place, like he didn't belong in this world. His body appeared unnatural, different enough to be unmissable. The skin of this person was not white as someone who had been exposed to extreme cold, nor was it the usual human skin tone. Instead, his skin had a peculiar pale blue hue, as if his blood wasn't circulating properly. Jason's first impression was extreme concern. He tried to focus, but the truth was, the color of the skin was something that couldn't be easily explained. His skin reflected sunlight in a strange way, as though light didn't penetrate his body but instead bounced off, creating an eerie pale blue hue, sending a chill down Jason's spine. The light was not the warm yellow of dawn, but an undefined light, as though the sun was struggling to penetrate a murky layer of another world. Is he in shock? Jason wondered, a thought flashing through his mind, but then he quickly realized that didn't make sense. If he were cold, why would his skin have this strange blue tint? This wasn't someone trapped in a snowstorm. This was someone standing still in a barren land, where daytime temperatures could be extremely harsh. As the vehicle drew nearer, Jason noticed that the bizarre details didn't stop at his skin. The man had an odd gait, as if he was moving against a strong wind. His head tilted slightly forward, and his steps were unstable, as though the force of the surrounding space was pulling him off balance. A sense of unreality, something not of this world, engulfed the entire scene. All that remained was the emptiness of the desert and the figure, standing there like an unsolved mystery. When the vehicle closed the gap by a few more steps, Jason could see the man's eyes. But what bewildered him the most was not the large, strange eyes, but the ambiguity in that gaze. His eyes weren't normal human eyes. They seemed deep, like staring into an infinite abyss, as if they carried stories Jason couldn't understand. The gaze held no life, no emotion like that of a human. And in those eyes there was something different, a cold calmness, as if he had seen things no one on earth could imagine. The air seemed to grow thick, heavy. Despite the lack of wind, Jason felt like an odd current of air was swirling around him, making it hard to breathe. The entire space became gloomy, still, as though time had stopped. The desert's rhythm seemed to freeze in an odd moment. Each step of the stranger seemed to stretch time, making everything around Jason feel heavy. Miller, the driver, was the first to speak after the eerie silence. He slowed down the vehicle, but his voice trembled as if also affected by the unexplainable anxiety. "What's going on, Jason? Do you see something strange?" Jason didn't answer immediately. He couldn't take his eyes off the stranger, despite every instinct in his body telling him something was wrong. He tried to swallow, but his throat felt dry, and only the heavy feeling filled his heart. "Should we stop?" one of the teammates in the vehicle asked, but his question seemed like a reflex, not fully grasping the reality before them. Jason wasn't sure what he was seeing, but one thing was very clear in his mind. This was not a normal person. This was an unexplainable creature. Doubt and fear welled up inside him as he realized he was standing in the midst of an event no soldier had ever been trained to handle. And then, as the vehicle drew just a few steps closer to the stranger, the silence hung thick, as if everything was waiting for something, a change, a new revelation. When the vehicle stopped, The wheels lightly brushed against the fine dust on the road, producing a small sound that echoed in the desert's stillness. The engine's hum ceased, and only silence remained. Jason stared intently at the strange man, his steps no longer steady. An odd feeling had taken over his entire body, an inexplicable sensation that he couldn't shake off. The door of the vehicle swung open with a loud bang, signaling what was about to happen. Jason stepped out of the vehicle, and immediately, a chilling feeling spread throughout his body, as though the air around him had suddenly changed, becoming heavy and thick. This feeling engulfed him entirely, causing him to shudder despite the lack of wind. The sun still blazed intensely above, but somehow the cold seeped deep into his heart, making him feel as though he had entered another world, one where humans could not exist in a normal way. He moved a few steps closer, his legs unsteady, as though he were sinking into a soft layer of soil, making each step feel like a battle with himself. And then, when the distance was only a few steps away, Jason locked eyes with the man. The eyes weren't human eyes. They were much larger than a human's, with an asymmetrical shape, as if they were staring right through him, not just him, but through everything around him, as if they were observing a completely different object. The eyes were deep, devoid of sclera, only two absolute black holes reflecting no light. A strange sensation arose within Jason, as though he was staring into a bottomless pit. Every time he looked into those eyes, the feeling of fear intensified, as if something not human was staring back at him, and an invisible power was seeping into his soul. The man stood motionless, but when Jason's gaze met his, everything seemed to stop in that moment. A deep silence covered them, but then the man opened his mouth, and the sound that came out was unlike any language Jason had ever heard. The sound was like a series of shrill tones, as if it was transmitted through the air in an unusual manner, impossible to distinguish clearly from speech. But as soon as the sound echoed, a miraculous change occurred. Jason didn't need to hear the words audibly, for in his mind, an indescribable message suddenly rang clear. Like an invisible wave, that message invaded his mind, and it was as clear as if someone was whispering directly into his thoughts. "My spacecraft is broken. I need materials to repair it. Do you have any metal?" It wasn't a human language, yet Jason understood every word, every syllable. The surge of fear immediately rose within him, an alien. Or perhaps not even human anymore. He tried to understand better, to rationalize the origin of this being, but everything was too vague, too incomprehensible. His eyes couldn't leave the strange being, even though his mind was confused, unable to accept the reality he was witnessing. Jason felt the anxiety, the urgency in the creature's mind. There was a sense of desperation, as if it were facing an emergency, and there was no time to explain further. It was as if it was pleading for help but could not express itself verbally. The fear inside Jason grew, not only because of the stark difference in the creature's appearance, but also because he was thrust into a situation beyond his control. But in that moment, a part of him remained clear-headed. "Stay calm, Jason," he told himself, trying to focus his thoughts on finding a way to solve this. "Take it slow, try to understand what's going on." He looked around, trying to find any material that could help the creature, but his mind was in a state of confusion. They were in the middle of the desert, with nothing but sand and rocks. How could he possibly help this being? They might not understand each other by words, but the telepathic connection made Jason realize that the creature was in a situation where everything seemed to be falling apart. Jason felt an unusual urge in his heart. Should he help? He could try to contact his teammates, but would they believe him? Or would they dismiss it as some strange hallucination? At that moment, the space around him seemed to shrink, and it was just Jason and the creature, both in a terrifying silence. In that stillness, Jason felt that he wasn't just facing an alien being, but confronting an entirely new truth, a secret that no one had yet been able to explain. And in that moment, he realized that he was standing at the threshold of something that could change everything he ever knew about this universe. Jason took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. As cold sweat began to bead on his forehead, he struggled to keep his voice steady, not wanting to reveal his fear. "We can take you to some military facilities. Groom Lake, where experts can help you." He spoke those words, but immediately a strange feeling surged within him, as if every sound was caught in the air. The creature didn't respond verbally, but by a distinct, powerful feeling that made Jason feel as though an invisible wave had struck him. No, the rejection was as powerful as a blow to Jason's mind, leaving him stunned. "Not people like you." The message was clear and filled with contempt, not just a refusal of the offer, but a deep disdain. Jason stepped back, but not from physical fear. It was the suffocating feeling in his mind. He felt as though he was standing in the midst of an internal struggle, not just a meeting with an alien creature, but a profound challenge to his reason and instincts. Every word, every gesture of this creature seemed to hold meaning he couldn't comprehend, but he felt clearly in every fiber of his being. It was a powerful feeling, so intense that he couldn't escape it, not because of the creature's strange form, but because of what it represented. Complete contempt for humanity. Jason felt like he was lost in another universe, a universe where every concept of power, help, and friendship was twisted. Psychological waves crashed into him, making it impossible to calm down, unable to find a clear solution. The unease grew minute by minute, and a part of him wanted to run to escape this strange space. The creature's eyes, deep and soulless, continued to stare directly at Jason, but there was no reassurance in that gaze, only a stillness as if waiting. The anxiety within Jason grew, as he realized he wasn't just communicating with an alien being, but with an entity with terrifying mental power, far beyond anything he could imagine. Meanwhile, Jason's teammates remained unaware of what was happening. They sat still in the vehicle, with no sign that they perceived the strange event unfolding before them. Every time Jason glanced through the vehicle's window, he saw them sitting silently, not speaking a word. It felt as if he was completely alone, as if he were standing in an infinite universe, with no one to share it with, no one to help. The communication didn't last long, only about 5 minutes. But in that time, the strange feeling grew as if a different world was unfolding right before Jason's eyes. Every moment, every movement of the creature seemed to etch itself deep into his mind, so deeply that it could not be erased. Then, after Jason's offer was coldly rejected, the creature said nothing more. Instead, it turned toward its spacecraft, and that action only made the atmosphere more mysterious, impossible to explain. The creature walked slowly, as if familiar with moving in this space, and as it approached the craft, Jason sensed an abnormal movement in the air, a change he couldn't explain. The spacecraft, unlike any vehicle Jason had ever seen, stood right in front of him, shining under the sunlight but not reflecting light like normal objects. Its body resembled a gigantic egg, smooth and without any traditional wings or engines. The entire shape was round and seamless, crafted from a strange, soft yet firm material, as though it didn't belong to this world. The spacecraft's features made Jason feel like he was looking into a dream, unable to believe his eyes. Everything before him seemed too unbelievable, as if the universe had taken a different turn into a dimension he couldn't comprehend. It felt like the spacecraft wasn't a physical object, but something intangible, floating between different dimensions. With slow but certain movements, the creature began to board its spacecraft. There was no sound, except for the gentle hum as the doors opened automatically. Jason could only stand there, wide-eyed, unable to take his gaze off the strange scene. The craft began to lift off without the roaring engines of normal airplanes. It floated into the sky as if unaffected by the Earth's gravity. First, the spacecraft moved straight up, but there was no vibration, no sign of force impacting the surrounding space. Jason could only watch as the spacecraft moved in an unusual manner, unlike any flying vehicle he had ever seen throughout his military service. It ascended slowly, and then suddenly disappeared toward the horizon without leaving a trace. It was as if space had swallowed it into another world. The shock inside Jason increased as he realized that nothing was real anymore. Everything had changed before his eyes, and now, the presence of the alien being along with that spacecraft was just an inexplicable mystery. When the encounter ended, Jason stood there, still staring at the spacecraft vanishing into the distant sky. Every second felt like it was stretching out endlessly. He tried to gather his thoughts, but he still felt as if something invisible had a tight grip on his mind, preventing him from breaking free. The cold still clung to him, not from the air but from the emptiness in his head. Jason turned back to the military vehicle, where his teammates were still sitting silently, as if they had no idea what had just happened. He tried to speak, but his voice seemed caught in his throat. Did you see anything?" Jason asked, his gaze confused, trying to find some response from his teammates with whom he had fought for so long. But all he got were blank stares, silent looks, no signs of acknowledgement. They didn't seem surprised, didn't have any emotions like he did. "There's nothing, Jason," Sergeant Miller said, turning his face toward the window without changing his expression. "Just a normal morning, nothing strange." Jason couldn't believe his ears. Everything had really happened. He knew exactly what he had seen, what he had felt. But why, when he clearly remembered every detail, did his teammates seem completely unaware of it? Why couldn't any of them feel the strangeness he had faced? A feeling of bewilderment rose inside him. He looked back at his companions. They remained silent, without worry, without a question. They all seemed like robots, as if they didn't belong to this world, as if they were living in a moment where only Jason had been left behind, separated from reality. That feeling, the feeling of being left in a space with no explanation, no answer, made Jason even more confused. A strange feeling rose within him, like there was a gap in his memory, a lost, forgotten time. He felt like he had lived through a moment that couldn't be understood by reason, as if a foggy veil had covered everything. Jason didn't know exactly what was happening, but the strange compulsion inside him grew stronger. There was something being hidden, something important he needed to understand. He looked at his teammates again, but they remained like faint shadows, unreachable. He felt a fear he couldn't describe, not because of what had happened, but because of what would come next. The gap in his memory grew, making him unable to explain the difference between what he had experienced and what his teammates still perceived. He began to feel as though he was being drawn into another world, a world where there was no concept of time or space. A world in which everything he saw, everything he experienced might not be real. Perhaps everything had already changed, and Jason knew that only he could see the truth hidden behind these strange events. Jason spent the days after the strange encounter scouring through every report, every document about UFO events near Groom Lake, a place known for its mysterious stories of strange phenomena. He found countless vague documents, short reports that people had tried to cover up or obscure key details. All he could see were dry words, lacking solid evidence, like explanations that couldn't convince anyone. Reports about UFOs, though similar to what he had experienced, contained no real facts. They were covered in fog with vague terms like strange balloon, unidentified object, and unusual activity. But nothing was clear. No document confirmed the presence of the extraterrestrial being Jason had encountered. And this only heightened the odd feeling inside him. Why was everything so vague? Why weren't these events clearly documented, as if some invisible hand was trying to erase all traces? Jason couldn't stop thinking about a possibility he didn't want to face. Was the government hiding something bigger? Something they didn't want to reveal because it could shatter the basic beliefs of society about the world and the universe. These questions haunted his mind, and every time he tried to search for answers, they became more elusive, as if covered by an impenetrable fog. The feeling of being lost in a world he couldn't comprehend haunted Jason. He wasn't just facing a strange event. He was also dealing with silence, with an invisible wall built by those in power. What he had experienced, what he had witnessed, didn't seem to belong to this world. Every time he thought about the creature, the strange spacecraft, the odd feeling surged in his heart, as if those memories were fading into darkness, hazy and impossible to grasp. Jason continued to search for answers, but he felt like he was lost in a maze with no way out. Calls to government agencies, meetings with military colleagues yielded nothing new. Everything was blocked, hidden, as if something very important was being concealed, not allowing him to access it. On long nights when the air was still and the night fell, Jason faced the memories of that strange encounter alone. He couldn't forget the creature's gaze, its large, deep, cold eyes, as if they could see right through everything, through his thoughts. Every time he thought of them, he felt as though he was trapped in a nightmare, unable to wake up. But was this a dream? Or was there really something larger, beyond human understanding, happening right before our eyes? With each passing day, this question haunted Jason's mind. Had he truly encountered an extraterrestrial being? Were the things he saw real? Or perhaps it was all just a product of imagination, a hallucination brought on by the stress and isolation of military work. But he couldn't shake the feeling that, no matter how hard anyone tried to erase it, what he had experienced still existed. It lived in his mind, in every moment when he faced the darkness. And in that stillness, with the answers still distant, Jason could only continue living with his memories, with questions still hanging in the air, unanswered. The traces of that strange encounter couldn't be erased, and in his mind they would forever remain a mystery with no solution. Please leave your comments about this story. Do you think we have really made contact with extraterrestrials? Could there be something we don't know yet being hidden from us? Let's continue searching for answers with X-Site.